The afternoon began like any other inside the NORAD command center. Screens glowed with streams of data. Radar sweeps pulsed rhythmically across monitors, and the low hum of computers formed the soundtrack to the Watchmen of America's skies. Most days it was routine. Stray commercial aircraft needing correction, a wandering private plane edging too close to restricted zones, or sometimes nothing at all. But then a blip appeared. It was small at first, almost indistinguishable among the usual air traffic that cluttered the map. Yet something about it stood out. It was moving too fast. Faster than anything in the civilian registry should have been capable of flying. Sector 5, track anomaly, a controller called out, leaning closer to his screen. His voice cut through the monotony like a crack of thunder. Another controller swiveled in her chair, typing commands rapidly. I see it. Speed reading. Wait, that can't be right. Give me the number, their supervisor barked. Mach 1.2 and climbing, she replied, disbelief dripping from her tone. And it's holding steady. The room stirred to life. Heads turned toward the main display wall where the radar feed was projected. The blip wasn't zigzagging like a lost pilot would. It was cutting across restricted airspace with surgical precision, carving a straight path toward the northeast. Transponder? Someone asked. Negative, no ID code, no flight plan, nothing in civilian or military databases. Comms? We've tried every frequency, no response. The supervisor frowned. In their world, silence often meant danger. A pilot in distress would scream for help, even if only for seconds. This one remained mute, a phantom slipping deeper into guarded skies. Could it be a test flight? One officer suggested. Maybe a stealth platform out of Edwards or Groom Lake? The supervisor shook his head. Not without notification, and not on this trajectory. He studied the track for a moment, then snapped into action. Scramble intercept, now. The order sent the room into overdrive. Red phones lit up. A klaxon wailed in the distance, its cry echoing through hangars miles away. Pilots already suited for alert duty sprinted toward their aircraft. Ground, crews scattering like ants around them. Within moments, twin F-16s roared to life, followed by two more for backup. Back in the control center, the supervisors tracked both the intruder and the interceptors on the large screen. The tension was palpable, a living thing that hung heavy in the recycled air. Vector confirmed, one controller reported. Our boys will have visual in less than 10 minutes. The supervisor folded his arms. Keep me updated. If it breaks further east, it'll be over civilian population centers. He paused, his mind weighing the unspoken possibilities. We need to know what we're dealing with before it gets that far. The controllers exchanged worried glances. In their line of work, unidentifieds rarely ended well. Sometimes it was a lost hobbyist in a Cessna who had wandered too far. Other times it was darker, smugglers, foreign incursions, or worse, but this felt different. The speed, the silence, the sheer confidence of its path. It all screamed deliberate. On the radar screen, the blip continued its march, indifferent to the storm it had stirred. The intercepting F-16s closed in steadily, their icons converging, like wolves on prey. Contact in 7 minutes, a controller announced. The supervisor leaned forward, staring at the blip as though he could will it into revealing its secrets. Let's hope it's nothing, he muttered. But deep down, he knew. Pilots didn't fly into restricted airspace at supersonic speeds for nothing. Whatever it wasn't a mistake. The room fell silent, each tick of the clock stretching longer than the last. All eyes fixed on the anomaly as if waiting for it to make its next move. Somewhere, high above the earth, alone, aircraft carved its path with ghost-like certainty. And for the first time in years, the men and women at NORAD felt it. The chilling whisper of something extraordinary approaching. The klaxon still echoed in the hangar as the F-16 pilots sprinted across the tarmac, helmets tucked under their arms. Engines whined to life, their throaty growls shaking the ground beneath the crews scrambling to pull wheel chocks and finish last-minute checks. The urgency was palpable. This wasn't a drill. The intruder in U.S. airspace had given no answers. No signals, only silence. Viper 1, clear for taxi. The tower barked. Copy, tower. Viper 1 rolling. The lead pilot, a seasoned major named Dan Reaper Hayes, jammed his throttle forward. His jet surged, nose dipping slightly, before snapping upward with raw, unrestrained power. Behind him, 3 more Falcons followed, their afterburners leaving shimmering trails of fire across the runway. In the command center, eyes never left the radar. Intercept in 5 minutes, a controller reported. The supervisor nodded grimly. Patch their comms through to me. I want to hear everything. High above, the squadron climbed through the thin air, their canopies reflecting the waning sun. Hayes's voice filled the channel. All right, boys. Mission profile is simple. We've got an unidentified in restricted airspace. Rules of engagement. Warn, escort, and if it refuses, force down. Weapons free only on direct order. Copy? Copy. That Viper 1, came the replies, voices tense but steady. The youngest pilot in the group, Lieutenant Alex Torch Ramirez, swallowed hard. This was his first real intercept. He'd trained endlessly for moments like this, but training sims didn't prepare you for the sound of your own heartbeat rattling in your helmet. Relax, Torch, another pilot teased, his tone light but edged with nerves. It's probably some rich guy in a jet who doesn't know his nose from his tail. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. No civilian jet could match the speed they were closing in on. At 20,000 feet, Hayes spotted the blip on his HUD. Visual in 90 seconds. The silence on the radio was deafening. Each man's focus narrowed to the tiny point ahead. The intruder still hadn't altered course, hadn't slowed, hadn't so much as wavered. Whoever was at the controls was either reckless or fearless or something else entirely. Control, this is Viper 1, Hayes called. We are approaching intercept range. No transponder, no comms received. Copy that, Viper 1. Proceed with caution. Hayes tightened his grip on the stick. Proceed with caution. Easy words for the men safe on the ground. Up here, a fraction of a second could mean life or death. The formation adjusted, 2 jets sweeping wide to box in the intruder, the other 2 flanking close behind. The sun dipped lower, casting streaks of gold across the sky as the distance closed. Then, for the first time, the unidentified aircraft came into view. Torch blinked, leaning forward. What the hell is that? Through his visor, the shape resolved. Sleek, angular, not modern, not new, but not something he recognized from any training manual. Its surface gleamed metallic red beneath the fading sunlight, like a predator flashing, its colors before a strike. It's not civilian, Hayes muttered, his voice hard. Repeat, this is not a civilian craft. One of the wingmen exhaled sharply. That's old. I've seen sketches of something like that in declassified archives. Stay focused, Hayes snapped. Form up. We'll force him to acknowledge us. The F-16 surged into perfect diamond formation, boxing the lone craft in. Normally, this maneuver would provoke a response, an evasive turn, a radio plea, even a panic dive. But the intruder remained steady, utterly unbothered by the war. Machines hemming it in. Torch's voice cracked slightly as he whispered, "It's flying like it owns the sky." Hayes frowned, the back of his neck prickling. He'd seen reckless pilots before, but this wasn't recklessness. This was mastery. Whoever was in that cockpit knew exactly what they were doing, and stranger still, they didn't seem threatened. Control. This is Viper 1, he said, forcing steel into his voice. We have visual on the intruder, still no comms. Aircraft appears, military, but unregistered, awaiting further orders. The supervisor's voice came back sharp. Maintain escort. Do not engage unless fired upon. Hayes's jaw clenched. That was the official line. But unofficially, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut. This wasn't just another intercept. Something was different. Something was wrong. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the unidentified aircraft gleamed like a crimson shadow against the twilight sky. And the F-16s, though armed and fast, suddenly felt small beside it. The legend had yet to reveal itself. The F-16s cut the sky in precise arcs, 4 machines moving as one. Their engines howled as they shifted into tighter formation, herding the crimson intruder like wolves corralling a lone defiant prey. Yet the prey didn't flinch. It moved, with eerie calm, as if unconcerned that 4 fully armed fighters now bracketed its every angle. "Close the gap," Hayes ordered, his voice a low growl in the comms. "Standard intercept pattern. I want him boxed in so tight he can't sneeze without us noticing." "Acknowledged," came the crisp replies. Lieutenant Ramirez, Torch, felt his stomach tighten as he pulled his Falcon closer. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down the inside of his oxygen mask. The intruder was close now, close enough that his mind could no longer dismiss it as an odd radar glitch. It was real, and it was like nothing he'd ever seen before. The aircraft ahead shimmered in the dying light. Its wings swept back in a unique, predatory angle, its fuselage a metallic red that gleamed even against the dimming sky. It wasn't new. Far from it. The paint was faded, scarred with the wear of time, but the craft moved with uncanny agility, smooth and precise, like a hawk gliding on invisible thermals. "Jesus," one of the wingmen muttered, unable to hold back. "Look at that thing, it's beautiful." "Focus," Hayes snapped, though he too was mesmerized. He'd seen countless aircraft in his career, sleek stealth bombers, rugged, close-support gunships, the finest fighters America could build. But this was different. It wasn't just an aircraft. It was a statement. Torch's hands shook slightly on the stick. His HUD flickered, struggling to lock a stable reading on the intruder. "Viper 1, I can't get a clean profile. Sensors are glitching. My systems don't even know what they're looking at." "Mine too," another pilot confirmed. "It's like the thing doesn't exist." The silence of the intruder was maddening. No radio signal, no evasive move, no response at all. It just kept flying as though the F-16s were an afterthought, like gnats buzzing around a predator. Hayes finally broke the silence. "Unknown aircraft, this is U.S. Air Force Viper 1. You are in restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be forced down. Acknowledge." "Nothing." He repeated the call, sharper this time. "Unknown aircraft, respond now." Still nothing. The pilots exchanged uneasy glances. Rules of engagement were clear. Warnings first, then escalation. But escalation against this felt wrong. The aircraft didn't move like a target. It moved like a master. "Control, this is Viper 1. Hayes radioed back to command. "We are at visual intercept. Target is unresponsive. Repeat, unresponsive. Flight profile is steady. Craft is unlike anything in current inventory. Civilian or military. Orders?" A long pause, then, "Maintain shadow. Do not engage unless hostile action is confirmed." Hayes clicked his mic twice in acknowledgement. Shadow it, he thought bitterly. That was like asking a mouse to shadow a lion. Torch's voice cracked over the channel. "Sir, I don't like this. It's not acting normal. It's like it knows we're here, and it doesn't care." Hayes couldn't disagree. Every instinct screamed that the pilot inside that cockpit wasn't intimidated. In fact, the calmness felt deliberate, almost mocking. Whoever they were either the bravest or most dangerous aviator alive. The formation tightened. The F-16s angled just yards away from the intruder now, close enough for Torch to see the cockpit outline. His breath caught. He thought he saw movement inside, a shadow, a figure, but it was too dark, too fleeting. "Confirm pilot visual?" Hayes asked. "Negative. Can't make out details," Torch replied, straining his eyes. "But there's someone in there, I swear I saw." Then the intruder tilted its wings ever so slightly, the gesture smooth, deliberate. Not evasive, not aggressive, just a tilt, as if acknowledging them. The pilots froze. It was a greeting, or a warning. Hayes felt his heart pound against his ribs. For the first time in years, he realized he wasn't in control of the sky. Torch whispered what they were all thinking. "Sir, what are we up against?" The radio crackled with static, but the sky remained eerily silent. The crimson aircraft flew on, indifferent, untouchable, dragging them deeper into the unknown. And in that moment, every man in the formation understood. They weren't just intercepting an intruder. They were confronting a legend. The crimson aircraft glided effortlessly ahead, locked within the F-16 formation, yet somehow it still felt untouchable. Each second the silence grew heavier, pressing into the cockpits of the interceptors. Torch's breathing rattled inside his helmet. He couldn't stop staring. The more he studied the intruder, the more it gnawed at him. "Sir?" Torch finally said, "I've seen pictures of something like this before, in the academy. Old files, sketches maybe. I thought it was just..." He hesitated. "Just a story." Hayes's grip tightened on the throttle. His eyes had been studying the lines of the jet, too. Every curve, every marking. It was uncanny. He knew those shapes. Not from training, manuals, but from whispers in briefing rooms. From rumors passed between veteran pilots who spoke of things too classified to ever make it to paper. "Say it," Hayes ordered. Torch hesitated. "Red Falcon." The comms went dead silent. The name hung in the air like a ghost. Every pilot had heard it, though none admitted to believing it. Red Falcon wasn't supposed to be real. It was an old legend, passed down from the Cold War era, an experimental prototype fighter years ahead of its time, flown by an ace whose skills bordered on superhuman. Officially, the aircraft had never existed. The pilot? Never listed. But, in hangars and mess halls and the back corners of simulators, the story was told. The Red Falcon had flown missions that defied logic. Intercepts no one else could survive, maneuvers no jet could replicate. And then one day it was gone, vanished without wreckage, without report, without a trace. Some said the program had been scrapped. Others whispered the aircraft had been destroyed during a classified op. But the boldest story claimed the ace pilot had never stopped flying, that he had become part of the sky itself, appearing only when history demanded it. And now here it was. "I don't believe it," one of the wingmen muttered, voice tight with awe. "That's impossible. Red Falcon was just a myth." Hayes didn't answer. His gut told him otherwise. This wasn't a ghost story. This was a presence, living, breathing, undeniable. He could feel it. The crimson craft tilted its wings again, slow and deliberate. It wasn't random. It was communication, an old-school pilot signal, the kind you used before radios. A salute. A challenge. Hayes's throat went dry. "Control, this is Viper 1, he said carefully. "We may have visual confirmation of a prototype aircraft, possibly historical. Request immediate confirmation from archives." The controller's voice returned, confused. "Say again, Viper 1. Prototype?" "I said..." Hayes drew a sharp breath. He wasn't sure how to phrase what his eyes refused to deny. "We're looking at Red Falcon." The line went quiet. Somewhere on the ground, supervisors were exchanging frantic glances. Even speaking the name on an official channel felt forbidden. Torch's heart hammered. His mind raced back to the late nights in the academy, when cadets swapped stories. They weren't supposed to know. The one about the Red Falcon maneuvering through missile barrages like smoke. The one about how the ace had outflown 6 enemy interceptors at once and vanished without firing a shot. They had laughed at it then, brushing it off as propaganda or tall tales. But now, here he was, chasing the impossible. "Sir, Torch, whispered. "If this is real, what do we even do? We can't touch him." Hayes didn't answer. He knew the lieutenant was right. The Red Falcon wasn't responding because it didn't need to. It was choosing to fly among them to let them see, and that thought was more terrifying than any hostile maneuver. The crimson jet shifted slightly, sliding into perfect harmony with their formation, as though mocking them with its precision. Every movement was effortless, instinctive, as if the pilot wasn't flying against them but flying above them, operating on a level they couldn't reach. For Hayes, the realization was humbling. He had flown for 20 years, seen combat, tested his limits. But in that instant, he understood. Compared to this pilot, he was still learning. The squadron flew on in tense silence, the F-16s bristling, with missiles and cannons, their weapons useless against the legend in their midst. And somewhere deep inside, Hayes felt the shift. This wasn't an intercept anymore. This was an encounter with a ghost, a hero, or something far greater than either. The Red Falcon was back, and the sky would never be the same. The silence inside the cockpits was suffocating. The F-16s maintained their diamond around the crimson jet, but no one wanted to be the first to speak. The only sounds were the steady hiss of oxygen, the muted hum of engines, and the faint beeping of HUDs failing to categorize what they were tracking. Finally, Torch broke the silence. His voice came through in a hushed whisper, as though speaking too loudly might provoke the thing flying beside them. "Sir, it really is him, isn't it?" Hayes didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the crimson plane's silhouette, watching the way it cut through the sky with unshakable calm. Every instinct told him the lieutenant was right, but saying it out loud made it real and dangerous. "Careful, Torch," Hayes finally said. "Ghost stories don't belong on open comms." But his voice carried none of its usual steel. The younger wingman, call sign Razor, couldn't hold back. "I heard the stories too. My uncle flew during the Gulf. He said the Red Falcon was a test pilot gone rogue, kept flying missions no one else could. Said the government buried it because no man should be that good." Torch swallowed hard. Others said he never came back from a mission, that he disappeared into the sky, like he became part of it. Razor chuckled nervously. "Yeah, some kind of ghost pilot watching over us. That's the one the rookies like to tell." "Enough," Hayes snapped, harsher than intended. But he couldn't stop the images rising in his own mind, stories he'd dismissed when he was younger, the Red Falcon turning up in impossible places, outmaneuvering entire squadrons, then vanishing before anyone could confirm it. The more he stared at the crimson jet now, the more he feared those stories weren't myths. The squadron's channel crackled as another voice joined. Viper 3, the oldest of the group, Captain Lewis Grinder Cole. His tone was slow, thoughtful, edged with respect. "I saw it once," he said quietly. The others froze. "Back when I was green," Grinder continued, "over the Pacific, training exercise. Something blew through our formation like we were standing still. Red wings, fast as hell. Control. Told us we saw nothing, we never spoke of it again." Torch's voice quivered. "And you think this is the same?" Grinder's silence was answer enough. Down in the command center, the controllers listened in stunned silence as fragments of the conversation filtered through. They couldn't hear every whispered word, but what they caught unsettled them. One supervisor leaned to another. "Red Falcon?" he muttered. "That's Cold War nonsense." "Tell that to them," the other replied, gesturing to the live feed of radar tracks moving in eerie unison. The official line would always be denial, but denial meant nothing when 4 of the Air Force's best were flying wingtip to wingtip with a legend. Up above, the intruder finally moved again, not aggressively, but deliberately. It shifted slightly out of the diamond, sliding forward, taking the lead of the formation. Torch's breath caught. "Sir, he's flying point." Indeed, the crimson jet now led the entire formation, the 4 F-16s falling into place behind it like students behind a master. It was humiliating, exhilarating, terrifying all at once. "He's not trying to escape," Grinder said softly. "He's guiding us, showing us how it's done." No one disagreed. The silence stretched again. Torch's mind spun with questions he didn't dare voice. Who was in that cockpit? How had the Red Falcon survived decades when no one else could? Why reveal himself now, of all times? Finally, Razor whispered the thought haunting them all. What if he's not alive? The channel went dead. The question lingered in their helmets like smoke. None of them wanted to believe in ghosts, yet none could deny the unnatural aura surrounding the jet ahead of them. Hayes's throat tightened. He forced himself to speak. Doesn't matter what he is. Alive, ghost, myth. It doesn't change what we do. Eyes up, weapons cold, respect the sky. But deep inside, even he wasn't sure who was really in command anymore. The crimson jet led them eastward, steady and sure, carving the horizon with its unmistakable presence. The F-16s followed, 4 modern machines bristling with technology and firepower, humbled by a relic that refused to die. And in the whispered corners of their comms, one truth was spreading. They weren't chasing Red Falcon. Red Falcon was leading them. The sky was painted in deep shades of gold and violet as the sun sank toward the horizon, its fading light glinting off the metal wings of the 5 aircraft slicing through the evening air. 4 F-16s flew with weapons armed, eyes sharp, every pilot on edge. Yet the crimson jet at their center, steady, deliberate, unshaken, was the true master of the formation. "Control, this is Viper 1, Hayes said, voice tight. "Unknown aircraft has assumed lead position. Repeat, intruder is leading. Formation. Still no comms." The reply from command was clipped, nervous. "Maintain position. Do not engage unless hostile action is confirmed." Unless hostile action is confirmed. Hayes bit down a curse. What defined hostile when the intruder already controlled the pace of the intercept? Inside the cockpit, Torch's pulse hammered. His finger brushed against the trigger of his AIM-9 Sidewinder, the missile's targeting systems chirping faintly in his headset as it struggled to lock on the enigmatic shape ahead. "I could take the shot right now," Torch whispered. "You won't," Hayes replied flatly. "You don't know that," Torch countered, his voice trembling between fear and adrenaline. "He's ignoring every warning. He's inside restricted airspace, that's hostile enough." Hayes took a breath, steadying his voice. "No, that's control. He's not panicking, not attacking. He's daring us to make the mistake. You, pull that trigger, Lieutenant, and you'll be starting a fight we can't win." Torch didn't answer. His hand stayed close to the trigger, but deep down he knew Hayes was right. Grinder's voice cut in, calm but heavy. "Watch how he flies. Look at the angles, not even a tremor, no wasted motion. Whoever's in that cockpit, he's not just surviving, he's teaching." The squadron fell silent as they watched. The crimson jet seemed to anticipate every subtle shift of air, every turbulence ripple, every adjustment of their Falcons. He wasn't reacting, he was predicting. Razor finally broke. "This isn't an intercept, it's an exam. He's testing us." The words hit like a hammer. None of them wanted to admit it, but it felt true. Hayes tried again, switching to the guard frequency. "Unknown aircraft, this is Viper 1 of the United States Air Force. You are ordered to identify yourself and alter course immediately. Failure to comply will result in force. Static." Then, as though in response, the crimson jet tipped its nose downward ever so slightly, then pulled into a slow, graceful climb. Not evasive, not aggressive, just a maneuver, a demonstration. Torch gasped. "That turn? No way." The maneuver was perfect. The Red Falcon banked at an angle physics shouldn't have allowed for an aircraft of its supposed age, holding impossible stability before leveling out again. The F-16s scrambled to mimic, each pilot sweating as they forced their jets through the turn. Only Grinder managed to hold the angle without losing formation. The others lagged, wobbling, then corrected. "He's showing us," Grinder murmured. "Showing us how it's done." Razor's nerves cracked. "Enough of this, we're letting him play with us. I say we shut him down." "Stand down," Hayes barked, his voice thunderous. "That's an order." Razor went quiet, but the tension in his silence was louder than words. For long minutes they flew like that, the Red Falcon weaving subtle maneuvers, each one a taunt and a lesson rolled into one. The squadron followed, straining to keep up. Sweat drenched their flight suits, muscles ached, but the crimson jet glided as if the sky itself obeyed it. Finally, Hayes realized the truth. This wasn't about restricted airspace, it wasn't about rules of engagement. It was about nerve. The Red Falcon was testing them, not their weapons, but their discipline, their ability to hold fire, to respect the sky, to resist fear. Hayes's voice was low, steady. Listen up. He wants to see if we break. So we don't. Hold formation. Hold fire. No matter what he does. Torch's breathing steadied. Razor muttered, but complied. Grinder stayed silent, but Hayes knew he understood better than anyone. The crimson jet tilted its wings once more, a gesture both mocking and respectful, before sliding back into its effortless glide. The sky darkened, the horizon fading into twilight, but the legend at their lead seemed timeless, eternal. And, in that suspended moment, every pilot in the formation understood. They weren't the hunters tonight, they were the students. The sky was nearly dark now, the last orange streaks fading into a deep indigo. The formation pressed onward, 4 F-16s trailing the crimson jet like shadows tethered to a flame. Hours of training, years of doctrine, and every rule of engagement said they should have forced him down by now. Yet none of them moved. Razor's frustration simmered. This is insane. We've let him lead us across half a state. He's making fools of us. Quiet, Hayes snapped. But even he felt the sting of truth. The Red Falcon wasn't a fugitive. It was a master conducting an orchestra, and they were merely players in his score. Captain Lewis Grinder Cole, the oldest in the group, broke his silence. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with something the younger pilots didn't expect. Reverence. You don't get it, do you? Grinder said softly. This isn't a fight. This is an honor. Torch blinked. Honor? He's violating our airspace, sir. No. Grinder corrected, his words slow and deliberate. He's reminding us. There are men who live for the sky, who never surrendered to rules or limits. The Red Falcon didn't vanish because he was shot down. He vanished because no cage could hold him. The channel went still. Razor scoffed, but his laugh was hollow. Torch's breathing slowed, as though absorbing the weight of the words. Even Hayes, hardened by years in the cockpit, felt something shift in his chest. Grinder continued, his voice taking on a tone of quiet defiance. Command can write their reports, they can deny what we're seeing, but we know. That's him. The ace they said was gone, and if he's chosen to fly with us tonight, then we show respect. Breaking every regulation drilled into him, Grinder switched to an open broadcast frequency, the one even the intruder could hear. This is Viper 3, he said clearly, his voice echoing across the comms. If you are the Red Falcon, know this. You're not our enemy. You're a legend, and every man here knows it. The words hung in the air like a prayer. The Red Falcon made no verbal reply, but slowly, gracefully it shifted position again, sliding closer to Grinder's jet until they were almost wingtip to wingtip. For a heartbeat, the crimson jet's canopy caught the dying light, and Grinder swore he saw a shadowed figure inside. A hand, a salute. Torch gasped. He's acknowledging you. Hayes felt the chill run down his spine. This wasn't hostility. It wasn't arrogance. It was something older, deeper. A bond between pilots across generations, beyond politics, beyond orders. The Red Falcon pulled ahead again, assuming lead. But the message had been delivered. Back in the control center, confusion reigned. Why the hell is Viper 3 broadcasting openly? One controller demanded. Cut his channel, the supervisor ordered, but even his voice wavered. None of them wanted to admit it, but they were hearing the same thing the pilots were seeing. This wasn't an ordinary intercept. For the first time, command hesitated. They didn't issue another order. They simply watched. Torch's voice came over the squadron channel, quieter now, steadier. Sir, I think Grinder's right. This doesn't feel like combat. It feels like history. Even Razor's anger had ebbed, replaced with reluctant awe. If it's really him, then we're flying with the best there ever was. Hayes exhaled slowly, letting the tension ease from his shoulders. He realized his trigger finger had been tight for miles. Now, it relaxed. All right, Hayes said, voice steady. No more talk of engaging. Weapons cold, formation steady. If the Red Falcon wants to fly, then we fly with him. The squadron acknowledged. For the first time that night, the interceptors felt less like pursuers and more like companions. They mirrored his movements, not to contain him, but to honor him. The Red Falcon, in turn, seemed to guide them gently, banking slowly, cutting across the stars with a grace none of their jets could match. Torch whispered, not to his squadron, not to command, but to himself. "I'll tell my kids about this night, that I flew with a legend." And as the crimson jet led them into the vast darkness, none of the pilots felt fear anymore, only respect. The night sky stretched endlessly, a vast ocean of stars above the fading glow of the horizon. The squadron flew in silence, 4 F-16s trailing the crimson jet that seemed to glide effortlessly, timeless, eternal. Every man in formation knew this wasn't just another intercept. This was history unfolding in front of their eyes. Torch's hands had finally steadied on the controls. He no longer felt fear pressing down on his chest. Instead, he felt an almost childlike awe. "He hasn't said a word," Torch murmured, breaking the quiet. "And yet, I feel like he's told us more than any briefing ever could." Hayes nodded, though the lieutenant couldn't see him. The Red Falcon's silence wasn't emptiness, it was deliberate. Every tilt of the wing, every curve through the sky was communication, wordless, but undeniable. Grinder's voice came, steady, calm, almost reverent. "Listen to the engines, do you hear it? Not straining, not forcing, that bird isn't fighting the sky. He's part of it, that's the difference." Razor muttered under his breath, but there was no venom left. "Part of it, huh? Then maybe that's why no one's ever caught him." Then it happened. The Red Falcon pulled higher, breaking from the formation for the first time. It rose above them, banking wide in a majestic arc that caught the moonlight. For a moment, the crimson wings gleamed like fire. Torch gasped. "He's leaving." "No," Hayes said softly. "He's saying goodbye." The crimson jet rolled slowly, deliberately, dipping its wings in the unmistakable gesture of respect. A pilot's salute. The squadron returned the gesture without hesitation, each F-16 rocking gently in reply. No order was given. It was instinct. Tradition, honor. Then in a single burst, the Red Falcon accelerated. Engines roared, not with the brute force of afterburners, but with a smooth surge that felt almost otherworldly. The crimson jet climbed sharply, cutting through the night with impossible speed. "Contact accelerating," Razor shouted. "Hoodie." Flashing warnings. He's breaking limits. But the limits weren't his. They were theirs. Within seconds, the Red Falcon was a streak against the stars, shrinking, fading. Radar struggled to keep up, icons flickering, then vanishing. No lock, no trace. And then he was gone. Silence filled the comms. No one breathed for a long moment. It was as if the sky itself had swallowed the legend whole. Torch's voice cracked softly. Did we just lose him?" Grinder answered, his tone solemn. "No, Lieutenant, he was never ours to lose." Hayes closed his eyes briefly, letting the weight of the moment settle over him. He knew command would demand explanations. They'd want technical breakdowns, flight logs, radar, data. But none of that would capture what they had just experienced. How do you explain flying beside a ghost? Back in the control center, controllers stared at blank screens where the blip had vanished. "He just disappeared," one whispered. "Jets don't disappear," another argued, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. The supervisor finally spoke, low and grim. "Maybe legends don't follow the rules we do." The F-16s regrouped, the silence between them not heavy with fear anymore, but with reverence. Torch finally said what they were all thinking. "I'll never forget this night. Not for as long as I live." "None of us will," Hayes agreed. His voice was steady again, but softer than usual. "And when they ask what happened up here, we'll tell them the truth. Not the report they want. The truth." Razor let out a long breath. "That we flew with the Red Falcon." "Yes," Hayes said quietly. "That we flew with the Red Falcon. As they turned back toward base, the night seemed different, richer, larger, as if touched by something greater than themselves. They had not fired a shot. They had not forced the intruder down, but they had been tested, and in the unbroken silence of the Red Falcon's flight, they had learned something about courage, humility, and the timeless bond of those who dare to own the sky. The crimson jet was gone, vanished into legend once more, but every man who flew that night carried the mark of the encounter, etched not on their HUDs or flight logs, but in their very souls. The Red Falcon had returned, if only for a moment, and that moment would outlive them all.